Probably the most ironic problem in human condition is the problem of bias. Basically, the more important something is for us, the more likely we are going to be wrong about it. We can see this in our everyday lives by noticing how hard it is to have a realistic picture of yourself. We do have the most information about ourselves, and it is in our interest to think about ourselves, but we still struggle to accept many of our properties, especially our flaws, that are obvious to anybody else's eyes. Many issues concerning ourselves are just too important for us to face as they are. But I'm not going to concentrate on our bias towards personal things, even though that is important. I'm going to concentrate on the bias towards more larger things in our worldviews, like political ideologies and religions. We already know that the opinions of mankind about such things are distributed geographically. Somewhere, people are much more likely to believe in certain belief systems than somewhere else, and the differences usually align very starkly with the borders of nations and cultures. This can't be explained with the different areas having access to different information anymore, because after the internet, at least the institutions responsible of the education of the people of even the most remote places have access to pretty much the same information everyone else does. Also, the geographical alignment of opinions is almost as stark within the richer areas where everyone has the access to the internet as it is in the poorer areas. This is simply statistically impossible in a world where people decide their worldviews with very little bias. In such a world, there would still be differences of opinion, but the different opinions would be distributed evenly across the different areas and communities. Even in most areas where on large scale the opinions seem to be distributed quite evenly, when we zoom into a smaller scale, we see that again the opinions are distributed between local communities. Part of this can be explained by the fact that like-minded people tend to group together, but in most cases the beliefs of the people were largely decided even before they had the opportunity to group. The beliefs of most people can be generally predicted by simply knowing the beliefs of those who raised them. Again, this would be impossible in a world where very little bias existed. So, how can we expect the systems that are based on these beliefs to work properly if we simply don't choose our beliefs in a way that tests whether or not those beliefs are actually true? There are good and bad reasons to be wrong. Bias is a bad reason. Bias is also many times thought to be impossible to fight against. You just are biased, and there's nothing that can be done about it. This idea isn't even remotely true. We can have precautions within ourselves to prevent ourselves from being biased and to make ourselves more objective. Here are 3 basic precautions to fight your personal bias. First precaution: try to be truly objective. This means that you actually distance yourself and remove your personal affections from the things you want to be objective about. Or at least make your decisions about things when you are most dispassionate about them, not for example when you are in the middle of a heated debate about the issue. Take some time away from the things, remember the arguments and analyze them when you are in a calm and more objective state of mind. Usually this is easiest when you are alone. Second precaution: as it is usually quite hard to be truly dispassionate about important things, and it might even be harmful to not have personal affections to certain things, another way to be more objective is to emulate objectivity. This is to know yourself and understand which things you might be biased towards, and then try to emulate what a person might do when he is not biased towards those issues. When you face an issue where you might be biased towards a certain view, double-check the arguments that support that view and be more suspicious towards them than towards the arguments that support other views. Require more from the answers that you like than from the answers that you don't like. When in debate with someone opposing your view, force yourself to continuously think how he might be right instead of how he might be wrong. The hardest part of this is most likely recognizing the things you are biased towards. The things that are straight important for you are of course quite obvious, but we usually are also biased towards the beliefs that support these important things. So, a good rule of thumb is to just in case assume you are biased towards everything that would be convenient towards the important beliefs in your current belief system. Third precaution: the last precaution is to have strong social connections with people that think differently from you. To continuously get your beliefs scrutinized by people who have different beliefs about them. And to use the principles of the second precaution of trying to think how they might be right in your discussions. A harder thing to fight than your own bias is the bias of your environment. Your community, nation, or even your whole culture might give you biased information which would bring you to biased conclusions even if you didn't have any personal bias. Of course, in richer areas where one has the access to all the internet, this isn't that big of a deal. You just have to give less credibility to possibly biased information your environment gives you and try to find more reliable information from the internet, remembering of course that there is a lot of misinformation in the internet. In areas where the internet and other sources of information are inaccessible or regulated, one can only try to either move elsewhere or try to follow the precautions that can be made to fight the bias of the environment, such as the freedom of thought and expression, free media, and the right to protest. Let's recap. 1. The problem of bias is probably the most ironic problem in human condition. The more important things are for us, the more likely we are to be wrong about them. 2. Most of the most important beliefs of the world are chosen very biasedly. This can be demonstrated by the geographical distribution of beliefs and the fact that people's future beliefs can be predicted from the beliefs of those who raised them. In a non-biased world, such predictions would be impossible and the different beliefs would be distributed more evenly. 3. You can have precautions against bias to be more objective. 4. For example, you can try to distance yourself from and be dispassionate towards things. You can emulate objectivity by being more suspicious towards things that are convenient for your belief system and by requiring better arguments from the answers you like than from the answers you don't like. And you can also have strong social connections with people who think differently from you. 5. The bias of your environment is harder to deal with. You can give your environment less credibility in the issues it might be biased towards, and you can try to forward the precautions against the environmental bias, such as freedom of thought and expression, free media, and the freedom to protest. If you found this interesting, subscribe, share, and like. And watch my other videos.